They threw Coca-Cola on a black woman at work. Her billionaire husband walks in and fires everyone. She walked into work that morning expecting nothing more than another ordinary day. But whispers followed her, laughter cut through the air, and, suddenly, she felt every eye on her. In a moment of cruel recklessness, a drink was thrown, a symbol of disrespect, of hatred she hadn't asked for. Yet, what happened next would shatter the silence and change everything in ways no one could imagine. Who would dare to turn the tables, and how far would justice really reach? This is the story that proves power, pride, and prejudice collide in the most unexpected ways. Her mornings were usually quiet, filled with the hum of computers and the familiar clatter of keyboards. She loved her work, the rhythm, the focus, the sense that she was contributing something meaningful. Colleagues passed by with polite nods, and most days the world felt orderly, fair, even safe. But beneath the surface, subtle looks and whispered comments had begun to follow her, small shadows she tried to ignore. Today, though, there was a tension she couldn't shake, a faint chill in the air, the uneasy glances that hinted something unexpected was about to erupt. She had no idea just how quickly ordinary routines could turn into humiliation, and how one moment would change everything. The office felt heavier than usual that day. She tried to focus on her tasks, fingers flying over the keyboard, but the atmosphere was thick with unease. Whispers floated across the room, barely audible yet unmistakable. Laughter followed her steps like shadows, sharp and cold. Every glance felt loaded, mocking, dismissive, as if the walls themselves were conspiring against her. She kept her head down, telling herself it was nothing, that people could be thoughtless, that her work mattered more than their cruelty. But small incidents had begun to pile up, dismissive comments, eye rolls when she spoke, subtle insults that left a bitter taste in her mouth. Today, though, was different. There was an edge she couldn't ignore, a tension that prickled at her skin. Something was about to happen, she could feel it. And then it came. A bottle of soda, casually tossed, landed across her desk with a splash. Coca-Cola. Staining her papers, her clothes, her dignity. A burst of laughter erupted, echoing through the office, and she froze. Faces blurred with amusement and contempt. The humiliation was sudden, sharp, undeniable. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but her voice caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet she remained rooted in place, trapped between shock and anger. For a moment the room seemed to pause, the laughter fading into a tense silence. Her heart pounded, each beat hammering out a rhythm of disbelief. How could they do this? How could the very people she worked alongside act with such cruel disregard for her humanity? She realized then that this was not an isolated act. It was part of a pattern, a subtle but relentless force she had endured for months. Her mind raced, a storm of fury and fear. Yet just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, the doors at the end of the hallway swung open. A figure appeared. Her husband, whose presence was as commanding as it was unexpected. He had been summoned, alerted, or perhaps sensed the injustice himself. His eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating, pausing on each offender with a weight that seemed to bend the very air. No one moved. The room, once filled with mockery, was now thick with anticipation, uncertainty, and fear. Every whispered insult, every laugh, every dismissive glance suddenly felt fragile, meaningless under the gaze of someone who wielded influence and power. She held her breath, not knowing what would happen next, wondering if this confrontation would finally bring relief, or if the humiliation would continue, hidden beneath polite smiles and professional facades. The room felt frozen, every heartbeat, amplified in the heavy silence. She could feel the weight of every eye, some filled with guilt, most with fear, and a few still daring to smirk. Her husband stepped forward, his presence filling the space with an unspoken authority that made even the boldest offenders shrink back. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to touch. "Enough," he said, his voice low but cutting through, the tension like a blade. Heads snapped toward him, some startled, others defiant. But no one dared move. He scanned the room, each glance a silent accusation, each step a judgment. The power dynamics that had once emboldened the cruel now trembled. Under the weight of justice in motion, she stood there, heart hammering, mind racing between relief and fear. Relief, because someone finally saw her pain. Fear, because she knew the fallout could be severe, reputations and careers poised to shatter in an instant. And then it happened, the moment of reckoning. Her husband, with a calm decisiveness, announced consequences that rippled through the office like a shockwave. Jobs, privileges, and carefully constructed facades, all threatened by the truth that had finally emerged. Laughter turned into murmurs. Smirks faded into stunned silence. The people who had thought cruelty was safe, invisible, and consequence-free now faced the reality of their actions, unmasked and undeniable. She felt a strange rush, vindication mixed with disbelief. The humiliation that had seemed insurmountable moments ago was now dissolving, replaced by a sense of justice she had never imagined possible. And yet, even in this moment of triumph, a question lingered, one that would not leave her or the viewers. Would this change hearts or simply punish? Could power alone confront prejudice? Or would the lessons of that day fade once the spotlight moved on? The office was quiet now, but the echoes of that moment lingered, forever etched in memory. The humiliation, the fear, the injustice, it had all been confronted, exposed, and held accountable. She walked through the same hallways that had once seemed so hostile, but now with a quiet strength, a resilience forged in fire. It wasn't just relief she felt. It was a reckoning, a confirmation that standing against cruelty, even when powerless, could shift the balance. Her husband's intervention had brought immediate justice, but the true victory was far more profound. It wasn't just about jobs or punishment. It was about dignity, recognition, and the refusal to allow prejudice to hide in plain sight. She realized that courage often begins with enduring, with choosing to remain visible in the face of those who would erase you. And, in that endurance, change had quietly begun. Yet the story didn't end with one office or one act of retaliation. It reflected a reality millions face every day. A reality where bias, discrimination, and microaggressions shape lives in ways that often go unseen. Her experience was a reminder. Injustice thrives in silence, but even a single act of accountability can ripple far beyond what we imagine. As she looked forward, she carried with her a question that would stay long after the office emptied. How many more faces like hers are still waiting for the world to see them? How many injustices go unnoticed, unchallenged, simply because no one dares to act? And what role will each of us play when confronted with the choice between silence and standing up? The echoes of that day were not just hers. They were a call to notice, a call to act, and a reminder that power, justice, and courage can collide to create change. And perhaps, just perhaps, that collision is the first step toward a world that refuses to turn away.